Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing, Eastside Jiu-Jitsu, and that's Badass Wood Art. We're fresh off of a 27-20 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday afternoon. And, you know, Miles, when we walked into this season and we're like, let's do a Monday morning show, like it'll be fun. I don't think we realized how many losses we're going to be following. And that one, among all of them, right, has been just frustrating to watch because this team appears to be close. They look like they can beat these teams like the Eagles, like the Chiefs, but then they just get in their own way. And yesterday, me being the biggest Kevin O'Connell stan out there, probably, I think yesterday's on Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell's game management, clock management, it just was abysmal. And you know, we talked about this after like the week 1 loss, but yeah, you're good. We talked about this after the week 1 loss, and they had preached that in a second year, Kirk Cousins, Kevin O'Connell, they're going to be gelling more than they were in the first year. So all those first year hiccups, we just weren't going to see anymore. But here we are in year 2 through 5 weeks, and we still to this day we're seeing more issues this year than we did in year 1 with Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins. So that leads me to believe that it has to be a little bit of Kevin O'Connell, and I hate criticizing him, but he needs to take some of this blame because this is on him. Now, when you talk about the fumbles and stuff, drop passes, people say that's bad coaching. I disagree. Players need to execute, end of the day. But it's been a frustrating start, Miles. What was your thought on yesterday's game?
I mean, very much everything you said, like the frustration, like it's just all these little things that keep adding up and they keep hitting in the situations where I know we keep bringing back to last year, but we watched them be way more effective in some of these areas last year as a first-time head coach, as a new offense, as a new team, new regime, all of those things. And they effectively made those decisions better last year. And they fit around those margins. Whereas this year, they're just imploding. And it's not just one person. It's not just the coach. It's not just like the quarterback. It's a little bit of everybody. But it's just like, at what point can they kind of put it together? A team like the Chiefs yesterday, like we talked about going in, you can't make some of these crucial mistakes against them and not get punished for it. I tweeted it after the game yesterday. Like, I understand a big part of it, like the emphasis is a few of the plays that the refs made a few calls here and there that like didn't help the team toward the end. But like, if you're relying on the refs to make a decision for you, like that to me is just not. And I'm not saying that like Kansas City doesn't benefit from some of these moves too, but like the Vikings did as well yesterday. There were some, I don't like to call them ticky-tack, but there were some small plays yesterday where Justin Jefferson was getting like, they'd call a PI on him, or they call like, there were things that like the refs were helping the Vikings out too. And I'm not saying helping as in like deliberately, but like there were like, it went both ways yesterday. And so I don't like using the refs as like a scapegoat. The Vikings didn't help themselves out, point blank period. The first quarter, they scored 3 points. The third quarter, they had 2 3-and-outs on offense, and then the defense gave up 2 touchdowns. Like, the first and third quarters are killing this football team. And then when you extrapolate even further out, it's not just the first and third quarters, it's those key situations and like 2-minute drills, like when the game matters the most, where last year they were so good. Like, this team was so good at being the team that like they'd get the ball at halftime, and they'd score before half, and they'd get the ball at halftime and score. Like those types of things. They're not doing that this year. They're doing that. Like, they look like Kevin O'Connell essentially yesterday looked kind of like a rookie head coach. You're getting the growing pains that I thought we were going to see last year from Kevin O'Connell now. And that doesn't mean that like he can't build and work off of these things too. But like, when you have experience across the board at quarterback, some players on defense, like your O-line, the continuity on your O-line is consistent. And I know they played pretty well yesterday, but like you have a lot of these factors. Like, TJ Hawkinson didn't have his best game yesterday. You know, Josh Oliver fumbles on the first play of the game after a 20-yard gain. Like, all these things are just adding up, but like, this team just can't put together a football game. And before I'll bounce it back to you, but the last thing I had to say on this is like, essentially this team is playing to their opponent. And what I mean by that is like whether they're good or bad, this team is playing to the opponent. And so like we don't even get a good gauge on like what this team is. They're
Ye
1-4, but they're playing down to a lowly Carolina Panthers team that got blown out by the Detroit Lions yesterday. They're playing up to the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs teams that are not undefeated. Kansas City's not undefeated, but they're 4-1, and the Eagles are 5
yeah.
and 0. They can, so they fit somewhere in the middle where being like a bad team and a really good team. They're somewhere right in that middle, and I don't even want to call them a good team because they haven't played like one, but they're somewhere in that middle ground. But they're not making the swings that you need to make in effective margins to be successful at the times that they need to be. And like we said last week, they got lucky to beat the Carolina Panthers. They got lucky that they didn't get blown out yesterday. Like there's a lot of those things too. Like there's a lot of those small areas that it's just frustrating. Like at the end of the game, it's frustrated because like you watch the game and you're like, hey, I think we got a shot. Like it's tied at halftime, even though we gave up the late field goal, which you don't want to do. But like, hey, you still found a way to be tied or
Tied
like
with the Chiefs, yeah.
the Chiefs, and the defense looked pretty good. The old line was looking good. Like it just sucked that like they couldn't put it together in the second half. Those first half adjustments didn't hit anywhere in the second half, and Kansas City just kind of after a great start to the first two plays on defense in the first drive in the third quarter, and then Mahomes basically throws up a prayer to 5'9" Justin Watson and Cam on him misplay that should have been an interception, and it becomes a first down, and they score a touchdown on that drive. Like it's those. Oh my! Like, dude, I want to just like scream.
It's comical though at this point, right? Like, if it happens once, it's like, damn, that sucks. Like, that's brutal. But like the fact that it's happening week in and week out, like a Caleb Evans last week, when he like all or versus the Chargers when he almost had the pick, and then it ends up as a completed touchdown. Yesterday with Cam Bynum and Justin Watson, but that's why you just can't make some of those mistakes early. Like when we talk about the Josh Oliver fumble right off the start, like it's incorrect to say that was the difference, but in reality, they got 7 points off that, and that kind of was the difference in this game. Instead of driving to tie, you're maybe driving to win at the end of the game, and it just changes things a little bit. So this team is just stuck in their head right now, and, yeah, they have the Bears next week. Um,
The Bears look great on
the
Thursday, by the way.
the Bears looked good. They beat a very stout Washington defense. I mean,
And
and
even
so
even the Bears are putting it together in a game where they're putting up points. They're making key stops on defense. They're like putting a game together that the Vikings haven't done this year. Like, and
yeah.
that doesn't like I don't want to get too far. We'll talk more about the Bears on Wednesday, but it's just like why can't like we there's just too much talent all across the board on this team to just not be better
Mhm.
in these areas. It's just
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah, in the run
I
game,
need
that
my
couldn't qu
coffee. That's I think that I haven't had my this is my first cup, so
I think the running game yesterday, that didn't help at all, right? I mean, Madison 8 for 26, Akers 5 for 15. I guess you can count Ty Chandler's 15-yard run on the fake punt, but the running game was kinda missing yesterday after we had seen, some momentum the week before. And then I don't know about you, but Kirk Cousins just looked a little off yesterday. Like he put together some consistent throws, but I thought he was maybe even rushing through some of his progressions. I know people are like bashing Hawkinson because he had a drop. I think a few other players had drops as well. Um, KJ Osborne, I think, had one. We know Alexander Madison had one. But and I know Kirk doesn't have to play perfect every single time, but in big games like that, you can't have throws being too high for your guys. Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
need to be on the money, and that comes just with the territory of being a quarterback. But
That kind of feels like it's been an issue this season for Kirk. And I've said this in I tweeted this a couple weeks ago. It just felt like there are some small throws, even if they become completions where like the throws behind the guy or like they're a little higher. Like usually Kirk is like one of the most pinpoint accurate quarterbacks in the league. And I'm not saying he still doesn't a pinpoint accurate quarterback, but he's missing a few of these throws that he's usually hitting that we're used to him hitting
yeah,
consistently. And so it's like those little things that just add up into a game where like they can stall drives, you can miss on touchdowns, you can like you're kicking field goals instead of getting touchdowns, like you're punting or you having to go for it on fourth down. Like there's a lot of these scenarios that like this team is just it feels like they're at the end of the ropes. Like, and it's
Mhm.
only 5 games through the season, but it really feels like they've like the luck. And I hate relying on luck, but like that's just like life, right? Like that's football. Like luck happens. I feel like the Vikings used literally all the luck they had last season, and now the football gods are like, all right, we're cutting that shit off, and like, and they're like, all right, like it's time to revert back because you got all that last year from us. So it's been tough.
You remember back when Zimmer was here and it felt like, I forget what season it was, but it felt like we could never just put together a complete game. Like either the defense would play very well, but the offense wouldn't, or the offense would play really well and the defense wouldn't.
2016 maybe.
Maybe it was back then, but I feel like that's kind of the case right now. I can see and sense the defense kind of getting a groove. Because even yesterday against Mahomes, I thought they played well. I mean, Mahomes is gonna Mahomes a few times a game, like, that's just
Yeah.
expected, but, like, they kind of held Travis Kelce to a, decent stat line. 10 receptions, you don't wanna let up, but only 67 yards, obviously a crucial touchdown at the end, but,
Well,
um
real quick, to the big part of that too, Matt, is that type of offense when they don't have like a true number one receiver outside of Kelsey, who was banged up throughout the game, so like he didn't always play. Is they spread us out instead. They said instead of like condensing things down and putting us in a like less advantageous situation, they said let's spread out their DBs and make it harder for them to blitz. And that's essentially what they did because they know that we're a blitzing type team. So if you spread us out and go basically one running back and 3 to 4 wide receivers on every play, what you do in that situation is that means your DB's got to be out there. You got to have guys to cover, and you can't
yes.
blitz and be like the rove dog blitzers that like we're used to seeing Flores do, because then that leaves somebody vacant in his zone or in man to man coverage, one on one. Like a lot of those scenarios, the Chiefs kind of took advantage of from us because we struggle even with Davenport in the fold now to get our 4 or 5 like basically our core our base defense is like 5 down linemen when you include the outside linebackers, but overall, like when our 4 or 5 linemen can't get consistent pressure generated without blitzing, like that's where a team like the Mahomes Chiefs is really going to kill you, because when you blitz, they always take advantage of the blitzing, but at the
Yeah.
same time, if you're not getting home on like 4 or 5 like linemen, it's really tough because he's gonna have all he's got all day with that O line, and he's so good at maneuvering the pocket, throwing off platform, like just creating with his feet. Like that throw to Kelsey, was it that second half? He basically like ran around the pocket, stepped up, and you're like, oh, is he going to take off and run on 3rd down? And then Kelsey just screams across the screen and he just flicks it to him. It's like he's got eyes in the back of his head because
Hey,
like
Kirk did
he
that though too.
no, Kirk looked good. I'm not. Yeah, Kirk looked good, but like it's it's just like those types of things against this team, like our team, we just can't. Like,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do? Like, I don't even know where to go from this point. That's the tough part.
Yeah, I mean, next week with the Bears, yeah, I honestly don't know, like, you'd like to think that you would beat them, but, the other thing we haven't talked about yet is we lost Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is hurt,
Yeah,
and they're saying hamstring, which I feel like is almost worse than an ankle because I feel like
yeah,
ankles
it
are a
can be.
lot more, yeah, depending on what the ankle issue is, but hamstrings are tricky. I think we saw that kinda with Cooper Kupp at the beginning of the year. They thought he'd be good to go, and he wasn't, and he just obviously came back 5 weeks later, but if Justin Jefferson misses 5 weeks, like,
Yeah.
it's done,
And this
and
is the point where we've talked about is the next 5 weeks are supposed to be your, like, get right 5 weeks, right? Like, besides the 49ers coming up, you have a pretty favorable schedule overall for the Vikings. They play the Bears, they play Green Bay, they play, I'd have to go back and look, the
the
Raiders, they play
Falcons, the
the
Saints.
Falcons. Like, there's teams that they can beat within that to kinda get yourself hopefully back to, like, 500 and better. But if you don't have Justin Jefferson, I'm not saying they can't survive, because Addison stepped up yesterday. We haven't talked about that either. Like the impact of JJ going down. Addison looked really good. And I'm not saying he's ready to be a bona fide number one. I don't think he is. But I think there's ways to like put him in the JJ role that'll help him if
Yes,
JJ misses. But at the same time, you're still missing the best offensive player in the league, not outside of quarterback, right? Like,
right.
and that's just going to be really tough. And hopefully the severity isn't like, I know they're being precautious this year because they have to be. Like, you can't just like run him back out there with a hamstring injury without knowing the severity of the injury, which was smart. I think they've always done good with done right by guys in that scenario. And if
Yeah.
JJ wasn't feeling good enough to go back out there, that kind of tells me something too. Because in the thick of the fourth quarter, you're needing to score a touchdown. Justin's not the type of guy to like come off the field. And if he felt like he could go, he would definitely try to go. So I feel like and that doesn't mean it's like a really bad scenario, but that just tells me that like he physically just didn't feel like he had it to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. It's I mean, yeah, I think Jordan Addison had a lot of great plays yesterday in the Chiefs game. I also thought Brandon Powell played well. He kind of showed that
Mm-hmm.
shiftiness and burst that
Yeah.
we saw from training camp, which was fun to see. But yeah, that's an uphill climb for this team moving forward. It has been since they dropped their first three. So it's it's
Real
just
quick,
frustrating.
should we hit on? So they're 1-4. Like it's gonna keep the talks are gonna keep happening because this team isn't winning. The trade deadline's at the end of the month on the 31st. What's the plan? Like
Yeah.
I hate saying well next week like if they drop to the Bears then it's fire sale. Well, like 1-4 is still pretty insurmountable. Like that's a really tough hill to climb. Like if they, like I hate looking at it like well if we get to 2-5 because the 49ers drafted the Bears and you get
Yeah.
mollywop there you beat the Bears like if we're at 2-5 that should no like I don't like they're not playing good. I don't care if it's one score games. They're not playing good enough football for me to be like, oh, we got to hold on to an Ezra Cleveland. We got to hold on to like if someone calls you and gives you offers a second for Daniel Hunter, like those are really hard scenarios to say no to for
Yeah.
me as a fan, knowing where things stand right now. But again, I know it's bigger. It's bigger than that. But like that, those conversations aren't like the Vikings. The Vikings are the reasons we're talking about potentially trading players like a Daniel Hunter, as like all these players that are basically on one-year deals. The Vikings are the reason for that. So don't blame any media
Yeah.
outlets, any podcasters, like anybody for those conversations. It's because the Vikings have brought it on themselves for these conversations to happen.
I go two different directions. So the first one is next week is our first division game. So like in theory,
That's a good point.
if you take care of your division the rest of the way, you should be able to kind of be in the hunt.
That's a
I
good
don't
point.
know if this team can beat Detroit, honestly, after what I kind of
The
watched.
way the
Dan
way
Campbell had
Detroit's playing, it'd be hard to. Detroit's a step above Minnesota right now. That doesn't mean things can't change by the time we meet the Lions. What is it like December, late November, or whatever the
yeah.
time frame is there? Like that doesn't mean things can't change between now and then. But right now, yeah, I'm with you. The Lions are the top of the division for sure.
So that's my one kind of outlook. Like I'm very close to calling it a season, but the fact that we haven't played any division teams yet keeps, me kind of with an open mind. But the second thing is I think you have to look to the future. And what does that look for?
Nothing.
Something else?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought you were giving me shit all of a sudden, but I think you have to look towards the future too. I mean, 2-5, if that is the scenario where you're at after the 49er game, um, you know, I think you have to look hard in the mirror and say, what is the future going to look like for us? Um, Obviously we love KJ Osborne. I think his story arc here has been great. I still don't see him coming back after this year. And I know Justin Jefferson got hurt, but they were even kind of spelling KJ Osborne with Brandon Powell yesterday. And so maybe that's a sign of things to come in the next few weeks. You mentioned Daniil Hunter. We've heard about Ezra Cleveland's contract conversations not going well, so he maybe could be an option. Um, yeah, I trust Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell to do what they need to do.
This team
Um,
isn't gonna have like a full on like full sale blown out like blow it out like unless they lose to the Bears, which but like I don't think this team is gonna full on like sell every player available. I think it's more of like there are some like a handful of guys if you get offers that like are just like too good to pass up.
yeah,
Like in my opinion, like Jordan Hicks, if the Buffalo Bills who lost their best linebacker Matt Milano yesterday to the season, it sounds like if they call and like, hey, we'll give you a fifth for Jordan Hicks, I'd have a hard time saying no to that, right? Like,
yeah,
and that's nothing because Hicks has played well, and
he
I think
has
like,
played really well.
and I think it's just like one of those scenarios like you have Brian Asamoah like sitting in the wings who could get more snaps. I know he's not as big as Hicks, but like you have a couple young guys that could like kind of spell him and play and get more valuable reps for the rest of the season.
Wouldn't even be surprised if they would ship Asamoah instead of Hicks. The way that the
I don't.
season's kind of progressed.
No, no, no. Asamoah's there's too much. Like, he's a draft pick. He's in year 2. No way. Like, I would actually probably be frustrated. Not that I think Asamoah is going to be like some like Pro Bowl level player, but like
Sure, sure.
Jordan Hicks isn't in your future plans, whereas Asamoah still has a chance to be in your future plans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But this team, it's frustrating nonetheless. And next week, I'm very conflicted because if you win, maybe you can get things on the right track and makes a little bit of noise in the back half of the season. But if you lose, you now own the tiebreaker over the Bears for what potentially could be Caleb Williams, if it gets to that point. Obviously, Carolina needs to win a few games, but they look a little dysfunctional too. So, any other thoughts? Otherwise, we can capture a lot more on Wednesday.
I mean, we played the Kansas City Chiefs tough. It's like I don't believe in moral victories for a team that has so many veterans and so much talent on this team to like find the silver linings, because a week ago we barely beat the shitty Carolina Panthers. So, like, I just like let's try to let's just hope JJ's like there it is. That's the thing I'm looking for. Like, let's hope Justin Jefferson is okay. Like
Yeah,
that in itself, he's the future of this franchise. Like, he's the guy. Like, he's the one player that, if he's hurt, like I hate saying this real quick. If he's hurt and misses a handful of weeks, there's your excuse if you're the front office to say, hey, like, this season's kind of a wrap. We're 1-4, like we're 1-4,
yep,
2-5, whatever it gets to in the next few weeks. If he's out, like, there's kind of I hate calling it a silver lining, but like a reason to like shut him down and kind of put a bow on the season a little bit and kind of
yeah,
focus on the future. But
yeah,
it's still early to like completely talk about that. But those are just things that popped in my head, so I'm gonna say it.
yeah. I'm with you. The Vikings really can only afford maybe 3 losses the rest of the way. 4 is being generous. Um,
Man,
but I have
12
to
games.
believe
You got to go like 9. You got to win like 8 or 9, like eight out of the next. How many games they got left? They got played 5. I'm bad
I
at
have
math. 12. So like, you got to go like 8 of the next 12 games. Basically 8-4 the rest of the way to
before we
even.
bef
Yeah.
before we wrap, I'm just gonna go game by game, and you just give me a quick win-loss, okay?
All right. All right.
Bears?
I think we win that, but
O
I'm
okay.
more skeptical than I should be.
No, you're good. Alright, so then 49ers?
We're getting mollywopped.
Okay, so 2 and 5.
Yeah.
Packers? At
That one's
Packers?
that's at Green Bay. Like, that's a toss up to me. So like, I if JJ's no go, I'm leaning the Packers. Like, I
Okay.
really think so.
Okay, 2 and 6. Vikings at Falcons?
I think we win that one. Even though,
S
yeah, they
Saints
played
at
well yesterday.
Vikings?
The Saints they mollywopped them. They
We
killed the
are home,
Patriots.
but yeah.
We haven't won a game at home. We're 0-4 at home,
You would think it'd be a little bit of an
or
advantage, but yeah,
0-3, 0-3 at home.
I see what you're saying.
I'll go Vikings, but I wouldn't be surprised if they beat us.
Okay, so 4 and 6, and then you got the Broncos,
I think we get that one too.
5 and 6, then you got the Bears again,
All right, so we're getting back to 500.
6 and 6, little bit before right after Thanksgiving. Then you go to the Raiders,
Yeah, yeah. So are we getting to 7-6?
7
Am
and
I?
6. Then you
Oh,
got the Bengals.
man, the Bengals are beating us. I think if
Then
Joe
you got
Burrow's like completely healthy by then, like the way they played
so
yesterday.
so you're 7 and 7 with 3 weeks to go in 3 division games. It goes Lions, Packers, Lions.
Can I slow down? Because I have a really hard time in the meat of that schedule. I know that some of those opponents aren't that great. Just the way this team is playing, if you don't have your best player, you're probably unexpectedly losing one or two of those games. Like the hard part is like knowing the scenario of JJ, because his impact like is so great in those scenarios. Like, that
Yeah,
factors has such a huge
defenses.
factor.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so like I have a hard time completely like let's maybe Wednesday let's discuss this again if we have a little bit more info on JJ, because I do want to know like where he sits, because that does dictate where I
We'll
feel
do
that
this
this team can.
exercise again on Wednesday.
Yeah, yeah.
But for sure, we're talking 7 and 7 into the final
Well,
3 weeks, which
and
is make or break.
I struggle for us to even get to that point. Like, that you got to go on a streak. Like, you got to go on a winning streak essentially.
Yeah,
And
you're
I
winning.
don't know if I think this team can do that. At least the way they're playing, the way they've played the first 5 weeks, I don't see this team being able to go on like a 5-game like winning streak, or like a 4 the next 6 streak, that type of thing.
I will say the Falcons game through the Raiders, so all of November and early December. That's
They're
your
winnable games. Yeah,
that's your chance.
it is. Yeah.
So we'll see, man. We'll see. But thank you for hopping on this morning. Thank you for everybody who is watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're really close to the 3,100 followers, in which case we will do that Lake Monster giveaway. I still have all the stuff right here waiting to ship it out to one lucky subscriber. So hit that subscribe button. Join us back here Tuesday. Nick Miller will be doing his Purple Process episode, and then the crew is back on Wednesday night for Vikings Happy Hour. I promise I won't end the stream early. I've been working on my producer skills since that moment. So maybe we can make a comeback. But until next time, everybody, Skol Vikings.